Foreign Secretary, good morning. Today you've announced a trial to give people daily lateral flow tests instead of having to quarantine for 10 days if they haven't had a positive test. What's the objective of this? Is the hope that the legal requirement for self-isolations for those who haven't tested positive will become a thing of the past?
Well, it's a trial. It's something that we're looking at. So it's not something that we've settled on yet. And we obviously need to check that it can work. But the idea is, as we come out of this lockdown, and we've made huge strides because of the vaccine rollout, that the self-isolation rules can be altered so that effectively you can take daily tests, and as long as you're not showing symptoms, get back to normal over a period of 7 days. You take the test once a day for 7 days. As long as you've not got any symptoms, you can avoid the self-isolation requirements. So it's just a test, but actually it would be quite an important extra tool to have as we come through lockdown.
Will secondary school children be vaccinated later this year?
Well, we're still very much looking at all of the possibilities beyond the top 9 cohorts. I can't say anything definitive, but obviously we've got over 34 million adults vaccinated. That's 60% of the adult population. As you know, Gloria, we're looking to, and we're on course to hit our target to get every adult vaccinated by the end of July. I think we'll say more about what we'll do after that period, but before then, obviously. But we haven't made any definitive decisions yet.
So it's under consideration to vaccinate secondary school children. Is that fair to say?
We're certainly not ruled out at this stage. We're looking at a whole range of things. I think, of course, the papers speculate on all of these things, and that's fair enough. But what we're trying to make sure is that we're at the position we can now see the finishing line in terms of the current set of restrictions because of the vaccine rollout. And once you get beyond June, the fourth step of the easing up roadmap from the lockdown, almost all social restrictions are lifted. So we do want to make sure that we look at the safeguards and the caveats, if you like, that we have in place, so that as we exit lockdown, we're still tracking the virus and making sure it can't take back hold when we've made so much progress to date.
And when it comes to tracking the virus, we now have the Indian variant in the UK, in Leicester and in London. What are you learning about that variant in terms of transmission and response to the vaccine?
Well, obviously, the scientists are looking at this very carefully, and I'd leave the technical commentary to the chief scientific advisor and the chief medical officer. But one of the things I think we feel increasingly confident of is that the vaccine rollout is, notwithstanding the variants, is holding up, and not just insulating people from risk of the virus, but also we're not seeing it have a dramatic effect on transmission. Now, obviously, we need to keep looking at that very carefully. We're going to be considering very carefully not just who we extend the vaccine to after the first 9 cohorts, after the adult population's all been done. We're also going to be looking at booster shots and things like that. So that's all part of the matrix of consideration. But the principal thing we're focused on at the moment is getting through the roadmap, step 3 on the 17th of May, step 4 on the 21st of June, and getting every adult vaccinated by the end of July.
Looking at India and what is happening in India, is clearly a real crisis situation. You've got the G7 meeting of foreign ministers this week. Clearly, defeating this virus has to be a global effort. Should we expect real concrete announcements of help and support from G7 leaders this week?
Yes, so we want to firm up the global effort, the team effort, if you like. We're taking a lead, not just with India. I'll be seeing Foreign Minister Jaishankar shortly, because we've invited the Indians, the Koreans and the Australians as guests as well. We've already provided oxygen concentrators, ventilators, generators. So we're doing our bit to help the Indians in their time of need, if you like. But globally, what we've got to see is an ambitious, if you like, international commitment to get COVAX and the vaccines to the most vulnerable countries. We've taken a lead in that. I think you can see that from the investment that we've put into the AstraZeneca vaccine, which of course many are now pursuing. You can see it in the 1 billion doses we've secured and we funded for COVAX. But also we've been clear that when we've got certainty of domestic supply, any excess, the majority of that will also go to COVAX.
Okay, let's talk foreign holidays. Is it government advice still not to book a holiday in Europe this summer or anywhere else?
Well, we've said that we're going to have these changes if we're in a position to make the changes to the travel arrangements on the 17th of May, and the government will set out shortly, so in advance, what those changes are. Obviously, so I'm not going to prejudice that or prejudge that. What I'd say is that obviously we want to open up. We know that for all sorts of reasons, but not least because people want a break and some holiday sun. We understand that. We just got to make sure we do this in a calibrated, safe way, so we don't find that, particularly with variants, as you mentioned earlier, we don't find the domestic progress that we've made with the vaccine rollout and with the immunisations is unpicked. So that's the balance, but we'll be saying more shortly, and the 17th of May is when any changes would take effect.
Can we assume that vaccine passports will play a part in enabling us to travel?
I think it's always dangerous to make assumptions, but the issue with the vaccine passports in terms of international travel, as opposed to the domestic discussion and debate that there's been, is making sure you've got a workable system and making sure that the approach that, say, we take with arrivals it marries with the approach that other countries are taking at the departures end. So we're working through all of that with our partners, and we'll say more once we're in a position to, as I said.
I'd like to ask you about Nazanin Zaghari Radcliffe, if I may. We recognise that we owe a historic debt to Iran. To secure her release, why haven't we paid it?
Well, first of all, it's a heartbreaking case. I spoke to Nazanin on Wednesday. I've been speaking to their families and where possible, the detainees regularly to keep them abreast of the situation, and also just to make sure that they've got direct access to me and to give them some support and some solace and some reassurance. We're very intensively negotiating this. I have been for several months now. We recognise that the IMS debt should be paid and repaid, and we're looking at the arrangements for securing that. The reality in terms of dealing with the Iranians, and I speak to Foreign Minister Zarif regularly, is that this takes place in parallel with and in the context of the wider negotiations for returning Iran to full compliance with the JCPOA, the nuclear deal. So we, of course, say that this is just a clear injustice. The detainees, Nazanin, all of our detainees should be released immediately. It's just a basic moral decency. They shouldn't be held as leverage in any negotiations. I think the diplomatic reality is, of course, that those negotiations are taking place in the context of those parallel JCPOA negotiations. That's the practical reality. But we're doing everything we can, and I mean everything, to secure the immediate release. And the only thing I would just say is that we when you look back over last year, since March of last year, we've argued for this. We've argued for their release, but we secured, or the Iranians were persuaded to release Nazanin on furlough. They also removed the ankle tag. They periodically engage in the kind of cat and mouse with her, and the extra year's sentence is an example of that. But they haven't yet returned her to prison, and we're doing everything, and I mean everything we can, to keep her out of Evin prison in Tehran.
Just a couple of things that struck me about that answer. You spoke to Nazanin on Wednesday, did you say?
Yes.
How do phone calls like that come about?
Because she's on furlough. Well, again, that's the point I'm making. She's not in Evin prison. We've managed to secure. We've campaigned very hard for her furlough. She doesn't have the ankle tag, so she's not just confined to her parents' house in Tehran. And of course, I mean, I've been speaking to her regularly, and indeed whenever she's wanted to reach out and just to talk her through how things are going and to give her as much feedback and reassurance, and also just some of the little things to see if I can, there's anything we can do to support her. What we don't want to do, and why I'm always mindful about saying too much about it, aside from obviously I will always respect her confidence to me and the confidence and the integrity of those conversations, but I'm just not going to do anything or say anything publicly, however frustrating the process is, that would be counterproductive to the clear goal we've got of getting her out permanently and back home with her loved ones, in particular Gabriella and Richard.
You hope that will happen this year?
I hope it will happen as soon as possible. As I said, we've been engaged intensively in discussions on this, and I'm doing everything I can to secure her imminent release. But there's no guarantees, and it is inherently unpredictable dealing with the regime in Iran. But we're doing everything we can, and I have at least a constructive dialogue with my Iranian opposite number about this.
I wanted to ask you about the situation in America. Joe Biden has marked 100 days. And I was just interested to know what you thought when he addressed Congress on Wednesday. He spoke of the need to tax the ultra-wealthy. He said that trickle-down economics had never worked. I just wondered, do you agree with Joe Biden on the myth of trickle-down economics?
Well, it's a sort of cardinal principle. If you're foreign secretary, you don't start commenting on other partners, particularly close partners, domestic politics or domestic policies. But look, the one thing I'd say is the new administration has really hit the ground running. I think you could say that politically, but internationally, which is what I see, the return to the Paris Agreement on climate change, reversing the decision to quit the WHO, the human rights agenda that we do arm in lockstep. We've put sanctions on those persecuting the Muslims in Xinjiang. We did it together and indeed with our European partners. And on the multilateral front, frankly, there's the scope and the opportunities, particularly in this year where we're presiding over the G7, we're hosting the climate change talks, I think is very exciting for us. And that's what we want to do. Global Britain is about not just trade, as important as that is for jobs and livelihoods, it's about being an even stronger force for good in the world. And I would certainly say that the US agenda and ours has got remarkably consistent overlaps in all of these areas.
Okay. Let's look at how we compare to other world leaders when it comes to how much we pay our Prime Minister. Now, it would take me too long in this interview to list all the countries that pay their leaders far more than we do. Do you think the Prime Minister's paid enough?
Yes, and look, when anyone goes into office and public office, I think we do it for the honour and the privilege of serving the country. And if you look consistently, including under this Prime Minister, we've frozen our salary, our ministerial salaries, and we've done that consciously because we recognise difficult financial times that we're in, and that we do these jobs because ultimately we're driven by a sense of public duty. Finally,
do you have any John Lewis furniture?
I'm sure we do. I'm terrible at answering these questions. My wife has got various people that she goes and looks at and discusses these things with, and I tend to rely on her advice. But I like John Lewis. It's a great. We buy plenty of stuff from there. But as I said at the Sunday Times yesterday, we have a mix of aesthetic adornments in the Raab house.
Foreign Secretary, good morning. It's Tom.
Good morning.
Let me take you back to the answer you were giving, Gloria, about foreign travel. Now, as I understand it, there is some tension in the cabinet at the moment on just how much foreign travel you should allow this summer with those new variants out there all across the world. And of course, there are some variants we have no protection for at all. Where are you in that debate? Are you with the doves or the hawks?
Well, again, an article of faith not to discuss the cabinet discussions we have. But what I would say is it's absolutely right that we discuss and debate those issues very carefully. And there are two drivers, aren't there? There's one, we want to open up. That's our instincts as a country. We want to be having the travel for social reasons, for economic reasons. We've been a leader in keeping supply chains open. That's been a cardinal rule principle, the way we've approached this pandemic. On the other hand, obviously, it goes without saying, we want to make sure we can do it safely. So I think that's the right approach. It's a balance. It's inevitably a balance. So, and I have to say, my experience is these discussions have been excellent, really thorough, really rigorous. And ultimately, the Prime Minister and the team will make the decisions together.
You didn't deny there are, I might call them tensions, you might call them discussions going on. There is a debate. I'm going to put you down in the dove category, if you don't mind, because it does seem to me you are veering along the lines of those variants are out there. They could do us incredible damage if they take off and take us back to square one, really, without any help of vaccines at all. Is it wise just to tell the British people now, look, you all want a summer holiday, we all want to, but we just might have to wait a little bit longer, maybe till next year, until we can take one safely?
I'm a bit confused about your doves and your hawks. Are the doves wanting to open up or are the hawks wanting to open up?
The doves don't want to open up, the hawks want everyone to go on holiday. And I'm putting you down as not opening up yet.
You're wrong to put me down as anything. I'm going to maintain my strategic ambiguity and protect the discussions. But what I would say is this, it's clearly a balance. We're going to make the decisions on the 17th of May, but we'll publish them, we'll announce them before then. And so shortly, because we're obviously into May now. And I think then you'll be able to see and look at this. I don't want to create extra uncertainty by speculating or musing about it here because the decision's coming shortly.
Okay, let me ask you about something else. We've got huge elections coming in Scotland, obviously, this week. If the SNP failed to win a majority of either the popular vote or majority of seats in the Holyrood Parliament, Are you clear they don't have a new mandate for a second independence referendum?
Look, we've said that we had the 2014 referendum. That was said at the time to be a once in a generation opportunity. And as we recover from COVID, I think the number one priority should be on that effort, both the businesses, the public health effort, and all of those other priorities. And that's what Douglas Ross is doing up north of the border. And I think he's doing a great job.
Yeah, but these selections matter, don't they? And you know what Nicola Sturgeon's going to say. If she gets a lot of votes, if she gets a majority of the vote, she's going to say, I put that on my paper, I put that in my literature, I now have a mandate. Is she right or wrong?
No, I think, by the way, it's always unhealthy for a politician in the last week before a set of elections to start commentating on the result. So I'm going to avoid that. But what I'd say is I think the priority of the people of the UK and of Scotland is recovering from this terrible pandemic. And I don't think the number one top priority for the people of Scotland is going to be a second referendum. But look, that's for the people of Scotland to decide. And I think if you want to keep the union together and you look at the team effort right across the UK in recovering from COVID-19, I think it shows you that we're all the positives that come from this great union. I see it on the international stage, the contribution and the benefit of having all four nations in the same international team, if you like. And I think that's the effort that the Scottish Conservatives are, the message that they're sending, but ultimately it will be for the people of Scotland to decide.
Okay, saying now is not the right time for a referendum may well be something that a lot of people agree with. I think Nicola Sturgeon said the same thing last week as well. The problem is, it does suggest that there will be a good time for a referendum once this pandemic is over. Is that what you're saying?
No, but we said at the time of the 2014 referendum that this was a once-in-a-generation opportunity and decision. It was a very serious decision, and we're not that far off from 2014. I don't think that the idea with referendums is that you just keep having another go until the people give you the answer that one or other set of politicians want to hear. I think you need to respect the outcome. We had that debate on Brexit, and I think it's similar for all referendums on those big constitutional issues.
So no second referendum in the lifetime of this Scottish Parliament, certainly the lifetime of your government.
Well, look, let's see what the people of Scotland decide. But I think we're very clear. It was a once-in-a-generation decision, and I think all sides said that. And I think we should stick to the undertakings we made.
Okay, hardest question of the day and the final one. It's not about John Lewis either. Are you watching Line of Duty final tonight? And who is H in your view? Oh
God, no! Do you know what? I haven't been watching that one at all. I don't get access to the television at the moment. My two boys seem to dominate it, but no.
It's on 9 o'clock. It's after the watershed. Boys should have been in bed by then.
They should. I know. Terrible parenting.
All right, you're swerving the key issue of the day.
I'm sorry.
But you were pretty good on everything else. Dominic Raab,
thank you very much for joining us.
Good to talk to you guys. Thanks.